We bring in Neal Coolong, sir. Welcome.
It's great to be here. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me.
So the Steelers, a mystifying team, went through at least a bye, so we're not so mystified. But we saw a weekend of football where we saw low scoring and teams expected to win that didn't. What were your thoughts watching it?
I felt overall on the week that it was kind of fresh into the mean. The one game that intrigued me the most was San Francisco and Cleveland. Yes. I think a lot of people expected San Francisco to just roll over Cleveland. But really what we see in the Browns is what I thought was going to end up happening when Jim Schwartz came in there. That's a high-level defensive team. They're really good. Myles Garrett, obviously, is a fantastic player, but you watch them, their entire unit. They play a lot of guys. They go really deep into packages. There's a lot of things they can do, and they're really good at all of it. An amazing job by Schwartz with just one training camp and 6 weeks into the season to largely paralyze an offense that's just as versatile as Cleveland's defense is. And I think the message overall for the league is, that this is not going to be a runaway for anybody. I think we kind of thought that going into it, or at the very least, we don't know. In the first half of the season, it still kind of seems to be trial and error for most teams. It's not suggesting they don't play hard or anything, but they don't get to that Super Bowl form for a while. You're really not seeing teams really running deep into seasons undefeated anymore. And Cleveland, for them to have done that with P.J. Walker playing pretty miserably. I mean, he did not have a very good game at all. It's a testament to how good of a defensive team they are. And San Francisco is no joke in three phases either. And Cleveland did enough to be able to take them out. They're a very impressive win.
Yeah, that's the interesting part. It's not just P.J. Walker, but Zach Wilson led the Jets in some way or shape or form over the Philadelphia Eagles. I want to ask you about Hurts for a moment. I felt Hurts last year, Neal, 90% of the time, I say played great. I mean, every game, 90% of the time, which I think is phenomenal to say that about any player. This year, I don't even think he's close to that. I've got him in the very good category to this point. Why do you think A, are you saying the same thing, and if so, why?
I think with Hurts, from what I'm seeing of him, it's not the end result. The aggregate result is what we're seeing. It's not surprising when you watch when you watch his games play to play. To me, the difference between last year and this year, it really is only a couple plays. It feels like, and they're not getting Devontae Smith going downfield as well as they did. A.J. Brown being who he is, he's going to make the plays that he makes. But they had two guys doing that last year, and they got a lot more out of their tight end play as well. And I think Philadelphia is not too far off, but you're seeing a team that required a high level of precision to do the things that they do well. It took a lot of coordination to be able to do that. To throw a new coaching staff in there, you can see perhaps why the struggles are happening the way that they are, but Jalen Hurts was not a wide-open, end-to-end kind of player, to mix my sports metaphors. It's more, not to say that he is not good, but they had phenomenal offensive coaching on that team last year. I think that is kind of the piece that's missing, not series to series, but just a few plays throughout the game are really the difference, in my opinion anyway. They were able to get him on the edge with room to operate. He had the ability to run a little bit more or hit something deep, and he did a great job deciding which one of those to do. He didn't make mistakes with the ball the way he did against the Jets. Now, the Jets aren't a sleeper defense either. Let's give them some credit. But they beat him up pretty good. He fought hard. He put up a good effort, which suggests to me he is very close to being the type of player that he is. But just maybe that's really it. The difference between the high end guys and the mid guys are just a couple plays. I think we're seeing that on as a trend throughout the NFL right now. And Hurts is perhaps the best example of that. He's a better player but I think they were able to put him in better positions last season. And through 6 games, let's keep in mind they're not failing. I mean, they're a 5-1 team, but he has looked better. The offense has played better, and that is something they're going to need to get going in a hurry if they want to be back where they were.
It was also a weekend where, for the most part, scoring was down. Now, we all know defensive coordinators aren't out there playing golf in the offseason every single day, getting the handicap down to 5. They're looking at tape of everybody so they can be ready for whatever they think the trend is at the moment. Why do you think that we're seeing scores down, especially with some of the talent we see on offense?
If we put it at the 10,000-foot level, teams are really just playing a lot more cover 2. There are situations in which they'll go, cover 0. They'll be a lot more aggressive, but you're not seeing kind of an all or nothing type of defense that ended up surrendering a lot of big plays. When you play back off of Patrick Mahomes, when he doesn't have the ability to escape horizontally, buy himself some time and make some ridiculous, 0 window throw 80 yards down the field, your scoring is going to come down to what's probably a little bit more reasonable. To say it's down compared to where it was, which was at historical highs. I think that it's regressing back to the mean because teams are really intent on not allowing the big plays deep down the field. You're seeing safeties getting drafted higher than they were, perhaps not top 5, but a good amount of them are going in the first round. And teams are committed to having 2 legit safeties playing deeper. Now, they'll move them around. You want to cover your slot, but it's that as well. You're getting more versatile linebackers that can help out with the slot. You're keeping more cornerbacks. There are more game-ready cornerbacks coming into the NFL. The money there is going up a little bit. I think with that in mind, they're able to keep 2 safeties back a lot more often to really try to take away those big plays. And it's teams in turn are throwing shorter, possessing the ball more, and playing more ball control, waiting for their opportunities to open up in order to score. Through 6 weeks, I mean that's a lot that you'd have to flesh out, but it just feels like that watching it because at the same time you've seen a lot of sacks too. Defense I think is catching up compared to where it was, but schematically there's a big emphasis on rolling coverage over the top and not allowing stuff outside the numbers.
Yep, Miami's the one that bucks this trend with what they've done to this point. What makes Mike McDaniel's offense, with Tua running it, and he made sure that when I talked to him in the spring, he emphasized that part. What makes that a difference?
I hate to be cliche and obvious, but speed. Those guys can move. Yeah. They're fast. Everybody's fast in the NFL. That can't be the difference between a team averaging 31 a game and one averaging 16. There's got to be more to it than that. Mike McDaniel he's a genius. The way that he sets up all of his players on the field, he's really committed to using everybody actively on every play. And I think that in turn, that in concert with the fact that you have some great run after catch receivers, that sets them up for big plays. And on top of that, they're a very effective running team. They've got great balance overall, and we've seen them put it together to significant results through this point in the season. A team that I don't know if there's a defense in the NFL that's really going to stop them, short of getting a second half stand maybe at some point. But you got to almost think they're kind of the favorites just with what they can do offensively. There are, as you mentioned, they're the ones that are bucking the trend. Yeah. And a lot of it is, in my opinion, just this total offensive philosophy. They use everybody. They have great athleticism. There are great players on that team and a quarterback that knows where to go with the ball. To me, he looks a lot more confident. He's not missing stuff nearly as often as he had earlier in his career. And he's really just kind of keeping it simple. There's a great player here who's going to be here. I'm going to get him the ball there, and he's going to go a long way. They've eaten off that several times this year. I think we'll see that continue.
All right, yeah, and that's the interesting part. I think they will continue with it because I think they've got something that is difficult to stop right now. We just went through another Chargers game where they lost. And, of course, the topic of analytics comes up. Do we take it? Do we have to do a better job of staying away from the simple answer of analytics and understanding that a coach knows his personnel and he knows what the weaknesses are of his personnel, thus that he is more inclined maybe to go for it on fourth down because he knows he has weaknesses? And I'm thinking about Washington, Oregon, for example. Dan Lanning got criticized, especially at the end of the game. I think he knew against Penix he had some holes back there, and this was his best shot to win, and he got criticized for it because he didn't make it.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to criticize when it fails, and people oftentimes want to take the ultimate fourth down decision as a very binary black and white thing. And yes, the decision go or not go is there, but from there, do you have any idea how much time, preparation, planning goes into what you're going to call on fourth down? Yep. Give me numbers all you want. And the data scientists are going to tell you that. These numbers represent frequency over the course of every team over the course of the season. They do not represent anything specific in that moment. You have to take into account, among many things, weather, injuries, your specific matchups, but perhaps most importantly, tendency. What have you run before? I remember talking with you back in the day when Mike Tomlin went 0 for 5 against the Cowboys on 2-point conversion.
Right.
You know what they were prior to that? Something like 75, 80%.
Right.
Up to that point, the trend is they're going to hit 4 out of 5. Okay, well, they missed on all of them because that doesn't matter. It's about who you have matched up. It's about who you're going against and what can you do with what you have against them. I've said this a lot. My decision, this is just me, to go for 2 points on a play is going to be far less frequent if Kenny Pickett is my quarterback. Whereas if Lamar Jackson is my quarterback, I'm going to go for 2 a lot more often. Right. That has nothing to do with anything else except for the fact that I've got a great dual threat weapon in a short space. I'm going to build up around that player. When we get into analytics, and everybody's going to get into this, and perhaps Brandon Staley becomes the scapegoat of the whole thing, it's not just simple, we're going to get this 60% of the time over the course of the season, because over the course of the season does not matter. This is not baseball. You don't play it like that. When you have 17 games, you have to play the situation. And we know that because what do they do in baseball when they face a specific situation? They're not going with what would work for them with a plan over 162 games. They got to play in a 7-game series. So they're playing it based on the situation. My point in that is when you lock into just the statistics of it, you're really defeating the purpose of what the analytics are there to tell you anyway. It's to give you a sense of what is going to happen so you can plan out everything else around it. Just because this number is where it is not the reason to go for it. It suggests if we do this now and we miss, we have to go for it next time. Do we have a good chance of making both of these? The numbers say this. It's a decision-making tool. It's not the ultimate factor, and it's not designed to be that. People just want the simple answer of something, and it doesn't really work that way.
Steelers go to SoFi, play the Rams. Coming up on Sunday, your thoughts on the matchup?
I was telling people earlier, I'm tired of predicting Steelers games. I know.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. Everything I pick is wrong. I thought Broderick Jones was going to be terrible against Baltimore. Literally the opposite of that. What I see on paper and film up to this point, the Rams have a very complicated scheme for the Steelers, the way that they play defense. I like the Rams throwing the ball in this game. They run crossers, slants, those types of things that tend to be effective against the Steelers defense that's not playing as much man as they did, probably due to the fact that they don't have, they have one good man cover corner who doesn't play all that much for some reason. The other ones are not going to be able to keep up with the Rams receivers, Cooper Kupp in particular, from the slot. If they play him in man, they're in trouble. So I would imagine they're going to run a lot of combos, high-low types of stuff that McVay loves to do. McVay loves this kind of a matchup. I would expect them to have a pretty solid offensive game. Can the Steelers keep up with, well, anybody in the league offensively? It's not the way that I see it, but we've seen them do some crazy things coming off of a bye as well. So, maybe this is kind of a get-right game for them. It's not a strong, talent-wise Rams team. But after saying all of that, I look at Aaron Donald versus Mason Cole, and I think that it's going to be a long game for the Steelers offense. So for me, I think it's tough to go cross-country to win against just about anybody. I think the Rams really have the matchup advantage in this. I don't think top to bottom they're a better team per se, but the Steelers just have weaknesses where the Rams have strengths. And it's a matchup game. Sometimes it just comes down to that.
My friend, always a pleasure making the show better like you always do.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Wheels, how are you today?
I would just like to say the same back to you, pal. I'm good. I was at the game last night, and I'm a little hoarse, but it was fun.
What is it like to be in that and to hear the passion in the stands and translate to the field?
Having been lucky enough to be in there last year and this year, I had been to all the other ones too over the years. But sure. The best way I can describe it to you and the Penn State fans, it's like every night's a red whiteout. Yeah, it's nuts. It's just, and it doesn't let up like the whiteout doesn't. Basically that goes the whole time. Well, the energy in these games, it starts, pre-game introductions, and it just keeps on going the whole time. And it can't be a comfortable environment for the opposition to play in. And these fans are right now. They love this team. The team loves this city. And it's a true love affair. It really is. From growing up here my whole life, and you're from the Northeast and all, it doesn't usually work that way in our cities, in New England and New York and Philadelphia. There's usually an adversarial thing going on. It's not. Yeah. It's just a love in from the beginning of the game to the end, Steve. And it's really fun to be there. I'm not a good fan. I was so used to doing stuff like you do during a game. And it's hard to sit there and be a fan. I'm just too antsy, but it's great to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's interesting you mention that, because when we're broadcasting games, we're involved and we're doing something. Instead of waiting for something to happen, we're already active, and it is really different. We're like, okay, now I have to sit here? What are you talking about? I can't just sit here.
It's awful. And baseball, you love baseball like I do, and so many people do, but the people that don't like, there's nothing happening. There's a lot happening. Oh, no. There's so much anticipation of what's going on. And now with the clock, of course it works a lot. It goes a lot quicker than it used to, but the game itself is just such a game of nuances and moments. Football is too, but baseball is a game I think of as moments and leading up to them. And like when Dominguez throws a double play ball in the center field, geez. Right. Because outs are so important in any game, but especially in a postseason game. So it's just fun. But I don't want to be doing the games anymore because I'm over that. But I'd like to be doing something that would keep my mind off the game per se, like that you are when you're a fan.
Right. Exactly. What is it? What's the ingredient with this team that makes the fans love them so much? You've seen decades of this as the different teams translate to different fans. Why does this team translate?
Well, that's a great question. The only thing I can say is that they give it back. The fans give it to them, but the players give it back, and they own up to everything. Starting with Bohm last year when he said, "I hate this bleeping place," and I've heard a lot of guys say that, but they didn't have their face on television when they said it. So they absolutely, heck, they go when they win the series and stuff, they go over to the Infinity Center across the street and party with them and ride the bull over there and all that sort of stuff. Some of those guys, they just have a feel for what it takes to play in this town. And you and I have talked about this before, because I say we both from this part of the country, and an agent will say, my player's going to come to Philadelphia. He can play there. He knows what. No, he has no idea what it's like till he gets here. Forget it. Yeah, because if you do well, they'll love you. If you don't, boy, they'll be all over you and trying to get you to be better or get rid of you. And I think this team, Dave Dombrowski's done a great job with not only bringing great players in here, paying great players, but of also bringing the correct personalities in here who know how to play. They're good players. We've got good players here, but they understand the mentality of playing in this city. And it all clicked last year in the postseason. And I don't know. I can remember, the Bet and also Citizens Bank Park being a home field advantage. It has been, but this is really intimidating for an opposition team to come in here. All that said and done, Arizona's a tough young baseball team, and they did not flinch last night. And I mean, that ball that Schwarber hit on the first pitch of the game sounded like a rifle.
Yeah.
It was so loud when he hit it, and then hitter later, Harper goes 430 or whatever he did with his, and it was deafening in there. But they hung in there, and they made a game out of it. They're good.
Yeah, no, they are a good team. And people don't realize they were leading the Dodgers for a good portion of the summer before them relinquishing it and then had to battle back to get into the playoffs. But you talk about mentality. I felt like they signed the single perfect free agent that matched the city in Harper, because that's a blue-collar city that works hard, and he's a star that works hard. Is that fair?
Amen. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And signing that kind of guy also made it possible for them to bring in a guy like Castellanos and Turner and those kind of players, because they said, all right, well, Harper's here, big-time free agent like him, there must be a reason why they want to play in Philadelphia. Yeah, Harper gets it. He's just, there's been stories out this week about how he talks about, and as a fan, gosh, who was more heralded young kid as a baseball player than Bryce Harper, the chosen one and all that stuff. And he said, look, the pressure was on me when I was 14, 15, 16. He says, there's no pressure on me now. He said, this is fun. I'm having a great time. So I think he just embraces it. And, of course, he has immense talent. And he reminds me of Jimmy Rollins. I always told you I thought Jimmy Rollins was our number one red light player back in those postseason days. Yep. Well, Harper's he just loves the moment.
Yeah. And, again, not everybody does. I'll give you New York examples. Kevin Brown and Ed Whitson were two very good pitchers other places. And with New York, they couldn't do it.
Right. Right. Hey, we had Lance Parrish here.
Yeah.
You remember very well. He was a great catcher with the Tigers.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. He came here, and it was over.
Yeah.
He started to struggle a little bit. They started to hoot on him. Oh, get me out of here.
Right.
So, yeah, you have to have a certain makeup to play, I think, baseball as much as anything. In this part of the country, I always said it starts, I guess, up in Maine, and it ends about Delaware.
Yeah.
And then, from that point, in between there, you need a different type of mentality to play in these areas.
Because you're going to play 81 of these. You're not playing 8 or 9. Right? And guess what? You're not wearing a helmet where they can't see your face.
Yeah, and what do we do? What's the old joke about football? Those fans sit up in the stands, and they scream and yell that this guy's holding, and this guy does that, and this guy does that, and then the coaches say, well, I don't know what happened until I look at the film, and then the fan goes out in the parking lot, and he can't find his car.
Yeah.
And what do we do? What do we do in baseball? like you said, you see them, you see their faces, you see their expressions. They make a mistake, we put error up all over the board. And there's never, in football, you go in there and you think, well, did he really hold, or did he really interfere with a guy because there's different rules? It's pretty cut and dry in our sport.
Yeah, and when you walk back to the dugout, guess who's around the dugout?
Oh yeah. They question your ancestry and all kinds of things in these towns. So, yeah, you got to have thick skin. And look, I love all sports, but there's never been a sport created that's more of a failure sport than baseball. If you fail 7 out of 10 times,
you are
hit 300. You're supposed to be really good.
Yeah, guess what? You got direct deposit.
Right. It's so hard. It's so hard to hit. And especially now, as hard as these guys throw, and they bring in so many different guys and games. And, a guy like Gallen last night and Merrill Kelly, who we're going to see tonight, they're more of a finesse guys.
Sure.
But the bullpens nowadays are almost all these guys that just hump up when they come in. And it's hard. It's hard to hit. It's always been hard to hit, and I don't think it's ever been harder to hit than right now.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that. Tonight NOLA goes, and we're going to get to the Penn State football questions in a second, so this will be my last famous question. Okay?
Really?
Yeah, we're going to do that. Because this is a two-way street.
Yeah.
But Bryson Stott's at second. Rojas is in center field. Bones at third. Nola's a former first-round pick of the team. What is this fan base deeply connects with the guys that come through the system, don't they?
Yeah, and it's been a while too. Look, they had a great run there. To produce those 70s and early 80 teams, and then the teams that we had starting around 2007 with a bunch of farm system guys there that won a World Series and then lost one to the Yankees. But yeah, there's something about when you develop players in your own system and seeing them come out there and compete. And the Phillies have not done a very good job of that. Just really bad for a number of years. And now all of a sudden, boom, here come these guys. And you mentioned Stott and Bohm, they're number ones. Nola was a number one. So, we made a lot of mistakes with number one picks for too many years. And now it's started. And then you mix them in with these great veterans. And Rojas has been a lifesaver in center field. I mean, he reminds me of Andrew Jones in a way, because when you look up, and you've done a lot of baseball, there's certain guys, the ball's hit, and then you look up and you say, oh, man, he's been running 3 or 4 steps already before I even saw him move.
Yeah.
Well, you don't teach that. That's instinctive, and he can do that. And then you get a kid like this Kirkering who's come up. Mm-hmm. I actually saw him pitch an inning in a Threshers game in Clearwater this year while I was down there still. This was in April. This guy went through the whole system and is now on the major league roster in postseason play. And he went to USF, which is University of South Florida right there.
Yeah.
One of the greatest stories I've ever seen. Rocket through a system like that. And, I still think Thompson's probably going to use him in a game because, you might get tired of all these guys we bring in that strike out people, but they walk too many.
Yeah. And I saw a lot of Rojas and did a lot of Rojas games when he was at Williamsport in 2019. And again, offensively, you knew that the speed was the calling card. It wasn't going to be power with him. But you watch him, not just the anticipation and the routes he takes. He understands where the ball is hit, and he makes up steps because he takes the best angle. And that's what struck me about it. I said, this guy can really play defense. He gets the angles of the game.
You picked right up on it. And as we're saying, as a play-by-play guy or color man, you look, you're watching the play in front of you. The ball's hit, boom, you look up. And you don't see that many outfielders that have already taken that many steps.
Yeah.
That play he made on Acuna with the bases loaded the other night was unbelievable. We have that angle there, at Citizens Bank Park that David wanted so bad. David Montgomery wanted so bad. I pointing up at the sky the other night saying, well, it almost did it. That almost cost us that angle. And David was right about that because he wanted the angle for balls that carry him off it for triples and inside the park home runs and more excitement and things like that. Well, it almost got us the other night because the kid almost got caught in between with that angle when Acuna hit that thing. But for whatever reasons, it's like in the 77, 78, the Dodgers, we were better than the Dodgers. I still believe it, but we couldn't beat them. And the Braves, the last 2 years, they're probably better than the Phillies on paper, but they just don't get it done right now. So you got to take advantage of this.
All right. I did my part. Okay?
All right. I just got one quick thing. How do we stop the St. Joe's prep connection?
Okay.
Those two guys are oof.
Yeah, well,
Man.
let's start with the guy receiving it.
Oof.
Last year, on a write-in, he got one vote for Big Ten Player of the Year.
Wow.
Guess who wrote him in?
You?
Me. Because that's
well. How did that game change last year in the playoffs when he got hurt?
When he got hurt in the third quarter, that's where Georgia won the game. They can't handle him. And the thing about him, Wheels, right? You look at him, and most receivers, you're like, okay, they're probably 5'11" to 6'1", 6'1.5". He's like 6'3", 6'4". When you're standing down with him, you don't realize how big he is. And he runs great routes, great hands. He's a hard handle. McCord is interesting on the other end in delivering the balls. I think he throws a really good ball. Right? But he throws a really good ball when he's got a lot of things working for him. Good protection, good drop. When he has to create and you get him off his spot, you can get him off kilter. And I'm going to be interested to see if Penn State can get him off kilter. Because as much as we talk about Harrison justifiably, McCord justifiably, there's another guy that's in there that just kind of sneaks it up on you and just makes a play, and that's the tight end Stover. There's going to be three tight ends in this game: Warren, Johnson, and Stover. They're just big-time players that change the fate of the game. Because, Wheels, you and I know. Tight end. Okay? Too quick for a linebacker, too big for a safety. That's what makes him such a tough cover. And that's what makes him even more dangerous. He looks out and sees 18 and says, I think I'm going to have some shots. They're covering him.
And Penn State's done a great job with the Alark with the tight ends the last couple of weeks. Hey, who's going to be the running back for Ohio State this weekend?
My guess it's going to be Henderson. I think they've held him out the last couple of weeks. Just my guess.
Yeah, I was thinking that
Williams has been legitimately hurt. Tranum has been good, but he's a good player, not a great player, but he's a good player. Hayden, I think they've been trying to redshirt him. But then, because of the circumstances, I think they felt they had to play him because they had to play him last year when Henderson got hurt because Henderson didn't play in the aforementioned Georgia game. Henderson is one of those guys where every time he touches the ball, you keep thinking, okay, please, this can't be the big one.
And he did to us last year.
Yeah. Well, he's done it each of the last 2 years. He's had one big run in each. They contained him most of the way in 21 until a big play. They contained him most of the way in 22 until that fourth quarter point. So, yeah.
Well, I was afraid you were going to say that because I've been how I am with this stuff, how I love it, and I've been watching it, and I'm thinking, I bet they're holding him out for this week. I bet they're holding him out for us. So I was hoping you were going to say that the Ohio State made an announcement that he's unavailable, but not to be. Huh?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, Day did say, hopefully Ohio State gets key players back this week. Okay? So the three key players are Emeka Ibuka, the wide receiver, very good.
Another one.
Travion Henderson and Denzel Burke, the corner. He's the best corner they have. He left the game in the third quarter last week, didn't come back. Ibuka didn't travel because he hurt his ankle against Maryland. If he plays, I think the concession wheels is going to be that they don't put him back on punt returns. They'll have Ballard return punts. That would be the concession. And then Henderson, we're all just kind of waiting to see what happens with him. It's like, all right. I mean, and because I'm all about the student athlete, and their health, I'd recommend one more week, but that's only me.
Absolutely.
Because you and I care.
I care. I do. I couldn't identify more with that thought, that train of thought right there. Give them another week. Get them ready for Michigan. Something like that.
That's what Jack and I say all the time. You know what? Because we care, I'd hold them out a week longer, wouldn't you?
It's a great way to put it. Keep them out another week. Well, they present so many problems. What's that defensive end or line?
JTT.
I'm trying to think.
JT. We just call him JTT. I don't even bother with the last name.
Man, oh man, he was great last year against us. Yeah. So, anyway, they just have great athletes.
Do you know what's interesting about that? When they lined him up at the beginning of the game last year, they lined him up against Olu, and Olu handled him. Handled him. So they flipped him over to the other side, which was a great move by Jim Knowles and Larry Johnson. And everyone has said to me, he says, yeah, you notice how Caden Wallace didn't handle him. I said, guys, Caden Wallace didn't play in the game. And they looked at me and went, what? I said, remember, that was the backup tackle that played in the game, not Wallace. I'm not going to go into names because I don't want to, because he had a rough day. Right. But I said, Wallace didn't play in the game. And I always go, oh.
No. Well, pay attention. The other thing is, how good is this Penn State defense? I mean, they look so fast, and they look like they really come up. I mean, they don't make every tackle, but they look like they come up with a purpose to hit somebody.
Well, first of all, they're getting production from all 11 spots, and that makes a big difference. And they're doing it with depth. So you look at King and Dixon, but then you look at Hardy and you look at Cam Miller. And then you get to the defensive front. Well, they've got Adisa Isaac and they have Chop. Oh, by the way, Dennis Sutton and Amin Vanover are really good. And you start going through the depth that they have. And Wheels, that's the difference in this team. And I'm sure Brian has told you about this because Brian's been up and he's seen it. And he's probably told you that about the athletic depth on the team. Yeah. So, but the big thing to me is after this week, I get you here next week.
I'm coming up for Indiana.
Yes.
You
didn't think I remembered this, buddy boy, but I did.
You're unbelievable. All the things you have in your mind, you remember that Renee and I are going to come up for.
I said it on the show that you and Renee were coming up.
I'm the biggest Texas Ranger fan right now, even though it's bad because you'd lose the home field advantage in the World Series. But I'd miss World Series games if the Phillies get in there and the Astros win. So I catch myself rooting for the Rangers right now, even though that's stupid. But I haven't been up there for so long. I can't wait to get up there and just be in the environment again, and hopefully stop by and see you a little bit before the show, and that'd be fun.
Well, yeah, this time we're outside the tunnel, the players' tunnel.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's easy.
So you and Renee better get over there. All right?
We'll be there.
I know. See, I know. I don't have to. I know you'll be there.
I got to come over. I got to see you and Roger. I mean, Jack.
you got to see Roger so Roger remembers who you are.
Your listeners don't need to hear that story, but that's still I know you have a lot of crazy things happen, but you have to keep that one in the memory bank as a good one.
Oh, that's one of the all-timers. I'm looking back like, what are you doing?
Who's this guy? What the hell's he doing in here?
Over here in the back. Here, you don't mind if I pull you aside for a moment and just do a quick synopsis? I won't give you all his credentials because we'll be here till the end of the game.
Oh, well,
and you're still mad at me I didn't go into the booth with you when I came up.
I am.
I know you are. I know.
Because I can't return the favor anymore.
Hey, my friend, it is so good to talk to you. I had a blast, and I will definitely see you in 10 or 11 days.
Thank you, Steve. I always enjoy catching up with you and texting back and forth, and you relax me a lot of times before games. Although I don't think anything will relax anybody before Saturday.
Well, maybe you'll be relaxed by 4 o'clock Saturday. How about that?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. We're so due to get those guys, and they're so good, and there's a great program and recruit so well and all. But man, we've been so close. So maybe this week.
Absolutely. Wheels, thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Steve. Anytime. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Best in the business and always does great work. Tommy McCarthy. T-Mac, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
Hey, Steve, what's going on, buddy?
Not too much. You've got a National League playoff game tonight. I got Ohio State this week. It's all good.
Oh, no big deal. No big deal.
Yeah. This is another week for the two guys in the business. By the way, I've heard on radio so much of you in the past since the playoffs began, because when I'm driving back from practice, you're on. You have been phenomenal on the radio side, by the way.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm lucky that I'm able to do it, quite honestly, Steve, because, most TV guys, and this has always been good for the Phillies. I mean, with the Phillies, because Harry did it before, and so did, Wheels and Andy Musser. But, they give me the opportunity to do this, which I'm really grateful for, to be quite honest with you.
Well, it sounds terrific. Zach Wheeler is one of those guys, it seems, regular season, postseason, it doesn't seem to me, he understands what he's doing, but it doesn't seem to matter to him in terms of approach. Am I reading him right from a distance?
I think you're absolutely right about that. I think that he has the makeup that he can get through any of this stuff. And, we've seen him sort of mature right before our eyes when it comes to his playoff, his playoff abilities, because, obviously he didn't do it with the Mets. He was left off the roster the one year that he got there with the Mets. And, for him, he kind of takes a regular season approach into the postseason, and it's exactly the same way.
And that's a big part of it, because you have certain guys that are like that. Texas has a guy in Nathan Eovaldi who's been like that. He seems in the postseason, he's fine.
Yeah.
John Lester was like that. Clayton Kershaw isn't. See, that's the thing that I always find interesting. Certain guys are not, yet Wheeler is.
Yeah, and I don't know why that is, honestly, because Kershaw, to me, and I don't know him, but from a distance, seems like he has the ability to slow the game down, no matter what the situation is.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is odd that he has struggled the way he has struggled during the course of, his postseason career. Every time he goes out there, I mean, he's had so many opportunities. You sit there and think, well, this is, Dodgers have the advantage here, but they don't. And I think you have to, anytime he's pitching, and I know he hates when they lean back to this, but they have to lean back to it, because it's just odd to see how he struggles so much.
One of the interesting moves is to play Rojas in center field, because he's like Maldonado behind the plate for the Astros. He doesn't give you anything with the bat. But that catch he made on Acuna, what is it about his ability to judge and run the right route that makes him a really good center fielder?
Well, instinctively, and it's funny because last week in Atlanta, I introduced Doug Glanville to him, and I think he's a lot like Doug Glanville, and maybe he's even going to be a little, maybe he's going to be better than Doug, but I think he's a lot like Doug in the way he reads the ball off the bat, and I think that's the key. So I listened to the two of them discuss the pre-pitch setup that they have. And it was really cool to listen to how he was dealing with what kind of pitch was being thrown, where the pitch was being thrown, and how he was setting up and moving even before the pitch gets to the plate. And that's what Doug was talking about that he used to do, that he thought gave him such an advantage over everybody else. So to me, that is where his success rate is at the highest level. I mean, he's 1 for 17, but you don't even realize it because he has made several very good plays, including that one, which he misjudged at first,
yes,
but was able to overcome it because of his abilities.
Yes, no, that's exactly right. He actually did misjudge it originally, and he still made the play. On a team that has star power, and the Phillies have plenty of it, with JT, with Harper, with Schwarber. Castellanos is a star. Stott is emerging. What have you seen in Castellanos that allows him to rise to the moment, and what have you seen in the development of Bryson Stott?
Well, I think Bryson is, you and me both know that the key to any team from a championship standpoint is to have homegrown guys.
Yep.
So the fact that the Phillies have Bohm and Stott doing what they're doing, is huge, and Rojas is huge.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think this is the normal ascension of somebody, but it's just quicker for Bryson Stott,
Mm-hmm.
I think. I just think he's, in some ways like Rojas, there's an instinct to him that he totally understands, that he's able to gather before a pitch comes in. I mean, the fact he's made this transition so fluidly from shortstop to second base is, I think, fantastic. I think it's unbelievable. And that, to me, is great. And then the two-strike approach, we asked him the other day, well, what kind of two-strike approach do you have? He said, well, I don't really have one. He says, it's basically my same approach all the time. And then Castellanos, I just think that he went through a funk the second half of the year. He's figured some things back out again, and I think that's why his success level has been so high in the postseason. And I also think he's got a fairly calm heartbeat, which is really important when it comes to games like this. It's kind of like what we were talking about with Zach Wheeler.
In the American League Championship Series, you have two managers in Bruce Bochy, who's won 3 times, and you have Dusty Baker, who won last year. They're two guys that manage a lot by feel, because we all know the influence of analytics. How would you categorize Rob Thompson and Torey Lovello as to their approach to managing?
Well, I think one is probably closer to the analytics side in Torey Lovello.
Yep.
I think the other is probably closer to Dusty Baker and Bruce Bochy and Rob Thompson. Now, he does not brush aside numbers. He does have numbers, but it's more of his numbers and his research with the help of the analytics department, the R&D department. But I remember earlier this year, Torey Lovello, Zach Gallen, who's starting tonight, was pitching against the Phillies, and he was going 5 2/3, and he was cruising. Like, he had maybe struggled a little bit with pitch count, but he was still in perfect line to get through the 6th inning, possibly pitch in the 7th inning. They're leading the game. Well, it turns out the Phillies come back and win the game, and I actually think it's because he was looking at the analytic part of the game, and that's why he took Zach Gallen out of the game. So I think he leans more toward it. Nothing wrong with it. That's his style. Whereas Rob, I think, leans more toward the feel thing.
And the feel part of it is I thought Rob, and you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, I felt like he used some of his top relievers earlier in games in high leverage situations because he didn't want it to get away. Am I right about that?
Yeah, no doubt. He didn't want the momentum to swing to the other team. He wanted to thwart it right where it was. And he even admitted to that he would bring in, Jeff Hoffman because he didn't want the inning to get away. He brought in Alvarado in the 7th inning one game because he just wanted to make sure that heart of that lineup was taken care of. So yeah, I think that's how he's doing it. He's not doing it because the numbers tell him to do it. He's doing it because he feels like that's what he has to do.
This is the 3rd round for each team. So everyone, over the years, guys would ask you and me about playoff experience and what it means. Mm-hmm. When you're playing so many rounds, and now this is the 3rd round, is that playoff experience part valid, or is it now out the door?
I do think there's some validity to it, but I also think it's validity when you're playing, let's say, here, compared to somewhere else. Like, I know that they've tried to replicate the sound here at the ballpark, but even Torey Lovello said, we probably made it at a 6. Where we had to make it a 10, because you can't replicate it. You just can't. And, Zach Gallen's from here. He understands it. He's a huge Eagles fan, so he knows what it's like at the Link.
Yep.
Merrill Kelly, who's pitching tomorrow, did, for a time, live outside of Philadelphia. In fact, his brother is a Phillies fan. Yeah. So he kind of understands it, but doesn't. He pitched in Korea. It was loud there, but not like this. So I do think the experience does weigh, even in this situation, but maybe not as much as it would have early on.
Because I was listening, coming back from a Penn State football practice, and you were talking about the fans doing the mock chop, and that the crowd is just unbelievable because they just think so differently than other fan bases.
They just think, they do. They have all these things, and it's almost like they have a meeting, like they have this board meeting beforehand, where they all say to themselves, hey, listen, we're going to do this, and the rest of you 35,000 have to do it as well.
It's unbelievable because
it's unbelievable.
And not only that, it's clever. I mean, the stuff is clever. It's not one of those like, we made something up and it's really stupid. It's clever.
Yes, I agree with that. And, I mean, for us, it makes us chuckle. It does. But it's just, it's majestic in some ways how they're able to coordinate all of it. It really is. And how one picks up right after the other.
My friend, enjoy it as always. Brilliant work as always. And thanks a lot for your time today, especially on game day, to talk to us.
You got it, buddy. Be good. I'll see you probably next week for Indiana.
Oh, you got the Indiana game? Oh, great.
Sounds like I do. Yeah, it sounds like I do. I'm trying to juggle the football baseball type of thing because it would be game one of the World Series, but I'm going to try to figure that part out. So.
Something tells me you'll make it work. It's a noon game. That helps.
Yeah, that does help. That does help. All right, I'll see you, Steve.
Thanks, T.